Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Michigan Innovation Podcast. And today we have Zach with Herd Local Incorporated joining us on Zoom. And I'm so excited. I met Zach, a very passionate Ph.D., when I met him up in Traverse City at the TC New Tech Conference. And so lucky enough to have him on the podcast today. So how are you doing today, Zach?
We're doing great. Thanks for having me, Rose.
Of course, of course. And like we always do on the podcast, we begin with Zach's story. And so I'm going to turn it right over to you, Zach. Take it away.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm Zach DeBruine. I was born and raised here in West Michigan, a small town just outside of Grand Rapids, between Greenville and Belding, if you know your geography there. Always had an interest in science. And so I went to Hope College to my bachelor's, started out in organic chemistry, did some research there, blew up a test tube in my face and decided it wasn't for me. Pivoted to molecular biology and cell biology, and I did enjoy that a lot. Never really thought about what I was going to do after my bachelor's until I was a senior, and then I was like, oh no, what's next? Well, the logical thing was to stay in school, so I decided to go for a PhD. Went to Van Andel Research Institute, really a premier research institute here in the Midwest and really the world in terms of what they do. State-of-the-art science and facilities and wonderful people. And really enjoyed my time there during my PhD training. Started out in structural biology, doing cryo-electron microscopy, looking at the structures of proteins down to atomic resolution. Did some biochemistry, really enjoyed the overall scientific process, but always loved getting on the computer and, trying to code new things. So in 2019, we all know what virus was starting to take shape. And in early 2020, we were told to go home and build out our home office. And for me, that was an opportunity. I got to finally do the computer programming I always wanted to do. I made a pivot to bioinformatics, machine learning, and stayed on there as a postdoc. Did high performance machine learning, and then took a tenure track position at Grand Valley State University here on the Medical Mile. So at Grand Valley, we've built out a student research team, a lot of bright students who are building genomics AI to advance personalized medicine. So that's been a rewarding process, and we've trained some wonderful models. And I'm now at a point where, I'm looking to make an impact, and how we make that impact could be a combination of things. It could also be experimenting with new ways of delivering our AI models outside of academia. And so that's what I'm excited to share today. Personally, I got married out of my bachelor's, and my wife and I have 3 children, a fourth one on the way. My oldest is Andrew. He's 8. Andrew is a very happy person, but he has a rare disease, and it's been an inspiration for us to serve others that are dealing with similar situations, and help us, squeeze the most juice out of life, given what we're given. And then 2 healthy daughters, 5 and 3. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. What a story. Very, very interesting. And so you're steeped in the scientific method, working with a very prestigious institution, both Van Andel and Grand Valley. Wow. And you're going to have 4 children. You have one on the way. When is your new one due?
Early December,
Oh, you're
an
getting
early Christmas
closer.
present.
Yeah, my daughter, I'm going to have another granddaughter coming up in February. So
Wonderful.
not that far behind you. We had an
Yeah.
ultrasound done yesterday and she was kicking and
Oh, yeah.
looking.
That's great.
Yeah, really cool. Well, I think that rare disease is something that personalized medicine is really going to really no pun intended, but zoom in on exactly where we can really leverage nanotech and biotech, especially, and the AI models. I'm sure you're focused on those as well. So let's get into your business. I love the name Herd Social. If you would tell us the idea behind Herd Social, and I want to know about that name. If
Yeah,
you could tell
absolutely.
us a little
Yeah.
bit about the name and your vision for Herd Social.
Yeah, well, Herd is all about connecting the rare disease community. Just a little personal story as to, what really motivated this business idea. My son Andrew wasn't diagnosed until the age of 3. We didn't know what he had. He had multiple severe clinical phenotypes. We spent many, many weeks in the ICU. After seizures, he'd get cardiac arrest, he'd have respiratory failure, get intubated, and every time we'd be hoping and praying for his recovery, and he'd always bounce back and become his happy, usual, cheerful self, happy with small things and always inspiring us. And then at the age of 3, he got a genetic diagnosis. We did trio whole exome sequencing, which is now, quite popular and widely available. But at the time, it was quite new to be able to get a really thorough genetic workup. And, we got this genetics report back, and the doctor was like, well, we have this variant of uncertain significance. We're not sure what it does. I'm like, oh, I'm a rare disease researcher. I can go figure out what it does. So you go back to
Oh,
the lab, and I modeled in the mutations of the protein structure. And I'm like, this is totally going to disrupt the structure and function of the protein. Turns out there was one scientific article online about this gene and a little bit of information about the protein structure, enough to know that there was a researcher out there who could validate what this particular mutation did in the lab. They did. It turned out to be a loss of function mutation, so the protein doesn't work as well as it normally would. And we had a variant of fairly certain significance. The problem was this mutation only affects 1 in 100 million live births. And so the chance of finding anyone like my son is next to none. Well, I started emailing researchers on scientific manuscripts, one in Saudi Arabia, one in Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania, one at Indiana University, down to a rural healthcare clinic in Indiana. And we met Ella and her parents. She had the same mutation.
in
And
Pennsylvania?
what's that?
Is that in Pennsylvania?
Uh, they were in Indiana at the time.
Oh, Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
I'm tracking.
And, getting on the Zoom call for the first time, we were a little nervous, like, how's this going to go? But it was just incredible to share our experiences. You would think they were twins, the way they look alike and act alike and have gone through such similar journeys.
How
Uh,
old is she?
she's 3 years older than Andrew, so she's 11 now.
Mhm.
So we were able to learn from some of the things they'd been through, one of which was a seizure med that Ella was taking that worked for her. And we tried it with Andrew, and it worked for him, and he's been seizure free for the last 5 years. And, we were able to, if you will, return the favor, where we had found out Andrew was very deficient in iron. And so he was almost anemic, had very, symptoms because of that. And Ella had similar symptoms, and we're like, did you ever check her iron levels? No, they didn't. So they got a blood test, and it was rock bottom. So they supplement iron, and now Ella is, building muscle mass and thriving and doing much better as a result. So this is just a simple getting together as parents and seeing what we've learned together, and it's been life-changing for both of us.
Oh, and so that's an amazing story. I'm so happy that you were able to connect and you found her through the other researcher.
Yep, it was just emailing researchers.
Well, I think the man upstairs might have had something to do with that as well. I'm so excited for you guys
Yeah, yeah,
to have made that connection. And is that what Herd Social is about, is to facilitate that type of connection between
absolutely.
parents and caregivers?
Absolutely. So, if you think about loneliness, 1 in 3 Americans are lonely every week. If you think about rare disease, 1 in 10 Americans have a rare disease. That means more than 1 in 10 Americans care for those with rare disease. That's 1 in 30 Americans that are both lonely and have rare disease, and you can be sure that loneliness is especially felt. So we need to connect. We need to learn from one another, and in a healthcare system that specializes in common diseases and treats symptoms of rare diseases, but doesn't directly cure them or provide personalized approaches. Those connections are imperative. So we want to connect individuals with rare disease to those with similar lived experiences or similar genetics. And that means not just within a given rare disease, but across rare diseases. Because right now there are many wonderful rare disease foundations, about 2,000 of them, 2,000 different rare diseases that are served by foundations, but they aren't talking to each other much. There's a lot they can learn from one another. And we need to stop building syndrome and label structures and more start building natural history and lived experience structures, and allowing free exchange of what we've learned in a way that everyone benefits from.
Oh, I think that you're onto something, and this is a perfect time with so much going on with forums and building online communities where people can speak with each other 7 by 24, anywhere, anyplace, anytime. So is that do you have a platform that you are building out on the internets?
Yes, we are starting to build it. We recently won Start Garden in Grand Rapids here with Judge's Choice, and that gave us our first little check, if you will. So we're going to.
You want a pitch competition? Is that what I'm hearing?
We did win a pitch competition in Grand Rapids. There's a wonderful initiative called Start Garden that basically takes in a
Start.
hundred Start
Wow.
Garden. Yes.
All right.
And wonderful program. We learned a lot. Yeah.
Okay. And that's in Grand Rapids. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And they gave you won some seed money.
Yep, some pre-seed money. So we're going to put some students on building our MVP. And we're also, raising a pre-seed round to hire a full-time team that can really take our product to the next level.
Oh, that is fantastic. I'm so excited for you. This is huge. Well, I think that you have identified a very, very critical, important, significant area. When I started working in the whole area of biotech, I was invited out to Boston with IBM Corporation when the whole idea of genomics and modifying gene structures and proteins, in its infancy, totally in its infancy. And I met several parents of rare disease, have children with rare diseases. And like you say, they're just sort of lost. And so this is years ago. So I'm so happy that, its time is now. And so.
Well, I do feel that the time is right now because genome sequencing is now affordable for the masses. It's only $100 the material costs. And AI has advanced to the point where we can make any level of research or any genomics knowledge accessible to lay audiences. And compute is finally there as well. I mean, we can go on the cloud and at scale never seen before, we can run these models. And so I feel like this could be a pivotal moment in our healthcare,
I totally agree.
as a society.
Yeah, it is. But the problem is always money. And so healthcare is so expensive and so complicated. How do you really see how this system will affect better serve? How will we bridge the herd social with actually practical applications for the kids and for the families? How do you see that really helping out the people with the rare disease, connecting with the old, mechanical, if you will, healthcare system that we have?
Yeah, you touch on two important points. It's that healthcare is complicated and it's expensive. You don't know how many specialists the average rare disease patient will see. how many different healthcare systems they'll have to visit to really find what works for them. And it's expensive. Insurance companies are often hesitant to sign off on some of these deals. Think of gene therapy, for instance. It can be $3 million a dose. And it can be life-changing though. And so where I really see healthcare going is more of a decentralized model where you don't have to get basic advice by going to the physician in person and sitting down in their office and having a consultation at $500 an hour. You can do that online, and you don't have to meet your local specialist. You can meet the world's top specialist in your rare disease. If you go to a local clinical geneticist, they have a plan of action, but they're not the expert in that rare disease. And so they'll often miss insights that are critical. So I think decentralizing it, putting the data in the hands of the patient and empowering them to interact with the most relevant medical specialist around on their terms is the epitome of personalized medicine. And it's much more efficient and it's much simpler.
What with that decentralized approach, and you mentioned something near and dear to my heart, and that is disparate systems, because my electronic medical record it captures disparate systems data from all over the world, bringing things together. Will Heard Social meet the need of that repository for a decentralized electronic medical record as well?
Yeah, that's definitely something we could do down the road. There are a lot of startups in the data aggregation space. And I think one mistake we're seeing across the board is they're doing the data aggregation, but they're not serving the patients with their data in any empowering way. And if it is, it's fairly contrived. What we would want to do is first empower the patients to connect and then start aggregating their medical records from all of these different healthcare systems in one place so that it can better empower their connections, which they've already started to make. I think we need to have the data serving the patient first, not just selling it out
To
to
your point,
providers.
these systems have been designed for e-prescribing, really for the clinical, which is fine. I mean, they definitely need the
Yep.
medical, it to be very geared to their workflow, but it doesn't meet the needs of you as a dad or someone who's trying to pull it all together. And I have a feeling that the information being so complicated that each specialist will want to see their specific information a specific way. So when you get to that point, or even before, definitely want to help you if I can. I think I can give you some guidance in that when you take that offline.
Sure.
Based on your experience, as a rare disease parent, and God bless you and your wife and your children. I pray for you. I look for great things to happen with this initiative. What do you think matters most to those people that have these rare diseases? Because you absolutely have this up close and personal. What is the what's the crux of this?
Yeah. I mean, you might think it's get a diagnosis. Well, I would argue that's not actually the sense of closure these people are looking for. Once you get a diagnosis, that's just the start of your journey. And then you'll find that if you have a rare disease, usually you don't get the most common answer you get is, I don't know, from medical specialists. And that's not a sense of closure either. And I think what the best we can do is equip those researching and hoping for a cure, like researchers and pharma companies, to do what we need to get a cure, but also to talk to each other. And right now, there's not enough talking to each other. We go to the hospital, we meet our clinical geneticist, we meet our specialist, and we go home and we start dealing with our symptoms and coping on by ourselves. But there are hundreds of people potentially who are in the same situation, and we need to talk. And for some, it works to fly across the country and go to an in-person symposium on your rare disease. But many of us can't afford that. And if we can, we may not have the time, and we may not be able to do it more than once or twice in a lifetime. So really, to meet the people who are most like us, we need to get online and find a way to connect and learn together.
Awesome, awesome, absolutely. I completely concur. And we have all the technology is really right there. Let's use it for this to make the world
Absolutely.
better in this particular very critical place. So you have also seen research. You know, the thing that's so awesome about you, Zach, is that you are the scientist here that's working on it's just like you are in this interesting place in time with your skills and your background, and now with your child giving you that passion to make this happen. So from the inside out, what are some of the barriers, including the science? How is the science? Is the science there? You know, we're talking technology like, you know, the internet and forums and communities and Zoom calls. We know that science and that technology is, you know, that's here to stay. We're using it right now while we're talking. But how about the science with protein and gene modification and really changing that gene or that protein that is causing your son's issue and the little girl, her issue? Is there any hope in modifying that protein?
I mean, gene therapy certainly is on the rise, and that promises to edit our mutations in our DNA in many, many cells of our body to reduce the symptoms. You can't undo developmental consequences that have happened. And also, gene therapy is still extremely, extremely expensive. And doing it for a syndrome as rare as my son's, you know, I love to be optimistic, but I don't see it happening in the very near future. You know, there's only 2 living instances of this disease that we're aware of. And it's just too small of a sample size until we really get gene therapy systematic. From a researcher perspective, though, I mean, research needs to happen, and it's wonderful that we have such remarkable federal funding compared to other countries to make it happen. But the barrier that I've seen as a researcher is we get tangled up in publishing and getting grants and asking interesting scientific questions and understanding rare disease mutations in terms of helping us understand biology better. And we sometimes lose that picture of there are patients out there in the real world who we can make a real difference for by understanding their disease better and communicating it to them. We need to meet the patients as researchers. And usually that doesn't happen because HIPAA and going to the same events doesn't happen. And there's this lay versus professional barrier. I feel like researchers want to meet the patients. On this type of a platform, they can do that. And if there's any language barrier, if there's any literacy barrier, AI and chatbots are remarkable at simplifying things down. And you know, the natural history that the researchers would get from interacting with the patients would inform their research and really help them be impactful, not just scientifically interesting in their knowledge discovery.
Oh, wow, you just turned on a lot of light bulbs for me in my mind because one of the products I created was one called Best Data. And what we would do is take data, medical data, and de-identify it with the important HIPAA identifiers, de-identify it and provide it to the researchers so that they could look at, you know, population health and do the analysis and maybe do some research on a specific issue in a specific part of the world, women who are pregnant over 40, that type of thing. But now what you're bringing up, and that was really my only experience with researchers wanting information. And now what you're telling me is that researchers want the identification of that patient so that they can actually de-identify that information so they can or identify that information so they can affect that person's life. that's important. That's such important work.
Well, there is a lot of nuance there. This is a area where regulation is important. And I think that the power of something like HERD is that these interactions could be de-identified because researchers should not always know the identity of, the patients they're interacting with. That can be a very personal issue. It's up to the patient how they want to disclose,
Right.
and the researcher is acting outside of their professional capacity, we can make that happen.
Sure.
But I think redacting information has never been easier. You can literally, you know, have a Zoom call and have an AI proctor on the call to shut things down when you start violating, terms of use. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for interactions, given our new advances in technology.
Absolutely. And again, I worked in this space specifically for de-identification and re-identification of data when it was, hey, we've got a de-identified patient that we think we can actually help. Let's identify it and go through the proper channels to see what we can do to help them.
Yep,
Um, this
wonderful.
is really critical. I really get it. So what do you think the future looks like for personalized medicine? And just for our folks out there, I'm gonna do a minute here on what is personalized medicine. It's also known as precision medicine. It's really a medical approach that tailors treatment and healthcare practices to the individual characteristics of each patient. Instead of one size fits all model, personalized medicine considers factors like genetics, lifestyle, environment, and even individual responses to medications to develop a targeted, effective treatment. Does that does that make sense? Is that what you mean
Absolutely.
by personalized
Yeah, I
medicine?
mean, we all need more personalized medicine, but and we've been talking about it for a long time, but I think there's really no better case study than very rare diseases and rare diseases in general for this because we can't necessarily learn from the broader population as a whole, and we need a custom treatment plan. Another aspect of personalized medicine is bringing in your story, who you are as an individual, what you want to do, what you're looking for in your care. For instance, with my son, if the physician could see what we like to do on family vacations, we like to go hiking and he's not mobile. Well, we need to know about jogging strollers with fat wheels and high clearance. That's what we want to know about. And so how you address your care and come up with a care plan can be tailored by your social interactions. Think about if we at Herd could sync your Facebook feed and extract what you want your life to look like or what it does look like. You know, we can identify pain points just by reviewing what you're posting or opportunities for enhancing quality of life and bring that to the physician or at least bring it to the social platforms so we can recommend connections that might be helpful for you. I think so. I think
Really?
personalized medicine is both about you as a person and your story, but also about, of course, tailoring your medical care.
Absolutely. I love that you're bringing in the social side based on the name Herd Social. So it's really bringing in the mind, body, spirit, family, bringing it all together. And the most important to me is community, so that you can not only connect. It sounds like you're connecting with other parents, but
Yep.
you're also connecting. How I had a question in connecting with the practitioners and clinicians. How do you see Herd Social connecting with pharmaceutical?
Absolutely. That is a very important long-term agenda. Um, we want to offer enterprise data solutions to pharma companies looking to do either clinical trial design or recruitment so that the rare disease patients on our platform can empower the successful development of therapeutics, be it for their very same rare disease or even other rare diseases like it. So we would hope to provide them the natural history data insights that empower their trials, the patient sample size that would power their trials, and really avoid some of the failures that have repeated themselves in history by being proactive about what's been working, off the shelf or over the counter for these patients to date.
So if I were to visualize Herd Social, tell me if I'm wrong. I see a community hub, if you will, for rare disease that would have a use case or users being parents, clinicians, researchers, pharma, everyone coming to one place so that they have a common language, they have a common place to, even that pharmaceutical researcher probably would like to talk to a patient now and then, aside from clinical trials, maybe they want to, I don't know if that's allowed. I know there's like you
We
said,
can
there's,
figure out how to structure that. I mean, there should be no regulatory hurdles that we can't, work with. We need to be able to make these types of conversations possible systematically.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think, so what's next for Herd Social? You're creating the minimal viable product, the MVP. So you've got that started. Is it in Grand Rapids? Is that where you're doing this?
I'm based in Grand Rapids. We are building a team that's greater Grand Rapids area. And we're raising a pre-seed round to really help us get the ground running and hire a full-time team. We're just really hoping to move this along as quickly
And
as we're able.
are you looking for a VC? Are you looking for a company to sort of take a look at what you've got, and when you have your MVP, will you be out shopping, or are you already shopping for a VC?
We have definitely been pitching around the state and Midwest. We have a lot of very promising conversations ongoing, and definitely looking to come up with multiple plans to grow here.
Oh my gosh, well, I think that this would be, watch this space, because I'm sure they're going to be, I can see a bidding thing going on here, because this is such important work. I want to take one more minute to go a little on a deeper dive. Do you see a place where nanotechnology is going to play in this science? I know it probably not Herd Social, but where does nanotech and all that's going on with those companies interrelate with the science that you're working on? Do you
Yeah,
work in that area at all, or is that
I have peripherally engaged with research in that space. I think, maybe your definition of nanotech is context dependent. I think of drug delivery, like nanoparticles,
me too?
nanocarriers.
Yes.
It's a key enabler to gene therapy. Um, and it'll allow us to deliver these gene editing chemicals and compounds in very cell type specific, organ specific manners. So think of a retinal degeneration disease. You don't want to edit your whole body if you can help it. You just want to get the retina. So doing an eye drop with nanocarrier delivery is
Exactly.
absolutely,
See, and that's why you are so perfect to run this company. I mean, you can really address the techie from the computer side with all your AI knowledge and the modeling that you've done, and then your skills in the area of just the biotech science, the protein compositions. I mean, that's way over most people's head.
thank you. Yeah.
And so I just think that you're in the right place at the right time. And before we close out the podcast, I want to just make sure, do you have any final words for the Michigan Innovation Podcast? And anything that you'd like to add regarding being in Michigan and
Yeah, I
how,
mean, since this is a Michigan podcast, and I love that you're supporting local innovation, that's great work. Keep it up. I think we're just so privileged to have such a vibrant community here in Michigan. We've just gotten out of the heels of Grand Rapids Tech Week and Michigan Tech Week, and what wonderful events. I mean, they're excellently organized, excellently attended. The generosity of mentors and investors and organizers and professionals who attend is just phenomenal. Having a conversation here, there's just no end to the opportunities. And it's not like we're on the coast where it's so cutthroat or incredibly fast paced. We get to drive for both impact and innovation here. I think that's just a real sweet spot, and we have a wonderful community.
Oh, I agree. And one of the things you mentioned early on in our conversation was medical mile. What is that?
In Grand Rapids, we have something called the Medical Mile. It's not quite a mile, but it's got to be getting close now. Innovation Park, we have, Spartan Innovations, Red Cedar Ventures, the Doug Meyer Medical Innovation Building at the bottom of the Medical Mile, the bottom of the hill. And then as you work your way up the hill, you pass the Van Andel Institute, which does, life science, cancer research, neurodegenerative research. You pass Corewell Health, the Children's Hospital, the Adult Hospital, Heart Hospital with Transplant Cancer Hospital. And you get up to Grand Valley's Life Science and Health Campus, where they train all the nurses. And it's a great mile. There's a lot of vibrant medical, med tech, health tech expertise.
That is amazing. I had no idea they called it the medical mile. And you mentioned so many prestigious institutions right there in the same proximity. And you know what they say about proximity? Proximity is power, because you're
Yep.
bringing all these great people together. And I know you're right in the midst of all that. Well, thank you so much, Zach. I wish nothing but the best for you and your family and your son and his colleague out in Indiana, or wherever she may be at this time. I want to also just take a minute and wish you nothing but the best with Herd Social, because you will bring so much ease to the suffering that a lot of these folks are experiencing. And wondered if in, let's say, a year or so, will you come back and give us an update on how Herd Social is doing?
I would love to. And if you want to check out, sign up for our ambassador list, go to herdsocial.com and sign up. I would love to talk to anyone who has a interest in being a part of our early product release, or even helping us develop a product that will serve your needs. It's amazing how many of us can relate to this problem, and it's more than you think. So I really
I
appreciate you, Rose, having me on, and this is a pleasure, and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Zach. And I will put that in the show notes, your website, and so that people can connect with you and look into the ambassador program. Is that what it is?
Yep, yep.
Okay, we'll make sure we get a link out there for everyone. And with that, I hope you're as inspired as I am to support Zach and what we're doing here in Michigan, and the Miracle Mile and all the great things that are happening in Grand Rapids, really to serve, the needs of our community. And I'm sure they reach well beyond Michigan. So with that, we will say, see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See ya.